welcome to the Next Canon podcast. My name is Danny Ray. You all know that. I'm really excited today because today we have a good new friend that we are making today named Wiley Basho Gorn. What's up, dude?
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be here, Danny. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I am so excited to dig in today. So, Wiley uses he, him pronouns. Wiley's a director, dramaturg, voice and text coach. Currently also working on House of Sueños with Meme Garcia from last week, which is fantastic. If you haven't given it a listen, go listen to it right now. I will link it down below. They've been working together since 2017, developing that script, and Wiley has directed each iteration since then, including this audio version that we've got, like Ookie Spooky Town right there in podcast form for you. It's amazing. All those links down below. Wiley, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, it's always a day by day experience in the midst of a pandemic, and I think it's good to like check in. It's good when we're asked that question because we always have the opportunity to say, you know what, right now, no, I'm not doing so good. Which I think now more than ever, it's like, let's just check in and speak how you're feeling in the moment. But in this moment, I'm doing really well. Despite being relatively unemployed, I've found a way to completely fill my days with work and activities. So that is both extremely exciting and incredibly draining, but I'm feeling great. Feeling great.
Well, I love to hear that you're feeling great. Totally agree on speaking those truths, because what is our life right now? This is honestly one of the craziest things, or the craziest thing probably since last March we've been here. So
Yeah, it's been wild. And you know, I think it's wonderful that we do have this enforced pause to reflect back on the reason why we're doing this stuff. It's heartbreaking that I know a lot of companies, because of financial stress and strain, and a lot of artists may not be able, well, I don't think any of us will make it out of this time the same as when we went in, but I just acknowledge that this is a huge time of change, and that change comes for so many different reasons and takes so many different forms depending on the person, the company, the experience. So yeah.
right. Yeah, there's no way to, like, especially because it's been so long in this phase, like there's no way to come out exactly the same. We've all been like missing so many different things. A lot of people talk about mourning the loss of the lives we had before, and it's like like it gets you right in the gut heart area.
Is there anything that you particularly like miss and are mourning, or is there something that comes up for you constantly about
I
that?
don't know. I was in the middle of, like, I was about to go into a tech week, right? Like I was directing children's theater, which is a wild and crazy time anyways. There were like 45 kids, like going nuts, like amazing, but like they were stressed, and I could see it starting. So we had like that giant snowstorm, and then we were like, what is this coronavirus? And then it was like cut. Nothing else. We were literally like a week out of the show, and I miss it for
Oh,
them, and I miss being in rehearsal, and that's pretty much the thing. You know what I mean? Everyone being
yeah.
healthy and able to be at rehearsal.
That's so great that I love that you were doing children's theater. I had some of my first jobs out of college were with a children's theater company that my friends created. So that's so wonderful that you're doing that work.
I think it's really fun, and it's hilarious because I've always been like good with kids, and so like they're like managing them with like a heavy hand is still something I'm okay at.
Oh, sure.
There was one time we were in a giant like it was like their auditorium sort of thing, you know, where there's a stage, but
Sure.
it's also the cafeteria and where they play basketball. Amazing. Love it.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
some kids were chit-chatting while they were supposed to be listening to the assistant director, and I was handling a situation, and I across the whole room I was just like, hey, we're not doing that, okay, let's get it together. And the lunch lady who was like watching over to help like crowd control for some reason, she was like, wow, mom voice on point. Like she was like, I need you here at lunchtime. I was like, I've got that. I've got that, like mom,
good.
like
That's
teacher moment.
absolutely incredible vocal control and range.
Exactly.
I love that.
So yeah, I miss it a lot, but it's like here we are. Poor kids. That's what I think most of the time. They got like
Yeah.
they got the worst end of it because it's so hard. Like we don't understand, so how could they understand in a lot of ways?
Oh my gosh. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So to get into sort of the topic of our fun little Next Canon podcast, what is the word canon to you? Like, what does that mean?
I was thinking about this over the last few days. I guess as I understand it now is canon is canon is a shared experience. It's something that we all agree has happened or is a part of our lives. And I think of it in terms of like nerd fandom, when someone's like, oh, it's canon now, it's part of it. And the ways that that's also like become a bit of a joke as well, which I love, because I think canon feels incredibly inviting for something to continue to be discovered as being true for us now. That feels like it's canon to me. I like that canon, in my experience, is something that is always added to. I'm interested in what it means to take something out of the canon, because it does feel like I don't know who determines the canon, because there's it's such a wide range depending on the setting that you're talking about. But yeah, canon feels like something that we all acknowledge has an influence on our present moment. And in theater, if we're specifically thinking about the theatrical canon, I do think it's it is a progression of growth, how one thing got to another, which is great and totally worth investigating. One of the exciting things that I love about this podcast that you've created is it really acknowledges and invites a conversation of there's a whole other range of experiences and stories that never even made it into that development. So even when I say development, whose development are we talking about? We're talking about Eurocentric white civilizations creating this stuff and putting it forward.
Yeah.
So even as I say, it's something that we all agree happened and has influence on it. I recognize that we is really based in my experience and how I perceive the world. So that's kind of where I'm at with canon right now.
Definitely.
So,
what shows like scream like, oh, canon to you? Like
canon, I mean, like Shakespeare, obviously, Shakespeare shows, because the Shakespeare canon is a canon within a larger canon. I think of like, I mean, I think of all those plays we read in theater history, going like progression of, okay, well, you start with the Greeks, and then, you move on to Elizabethan Jacobean stuff, and then you get into Chekhov and Shaw and those kind of things. So I guess that's what I experience as canon. But then I also think of canon as in the world of like Star Wars canon or Lord of the Rings canon, or all these other nerddoms, or even like
Marvel, DC,
Marvel,
like the
DC,
differences.
The differences and how canon has been put in the hands of the public in an interesting way, that a lot of those stories are people making responses to what was already set down. So yeah,
like the policing of canon, especially in the pop culture realm, is kind of interesting happening right now, because my brother works in animation, and he is a character designer on Young Justice. Have you seen this show?
I have not. It's
from
so
when
cool,
we were
though.
when I was like a young kid, and then there's like another series, but they're like creating something that is canon to this system, you know? So it's like the creation of canon is ever going. Like you said, it's like in development.
And as speaking as like a LARPer, a live action role play connoisseur from a very early age, that whole concept of world building and backstory is so informative to your moment right now and the future that you're creating for your character. Like I remember doing those games when I was a kid, and like the game writers would just get so into like the geopolitical politics of this land that we are existing in now, and there'd all be all these pages of lore that you'd have to go back and read to really understand the nuances of like, okay, this is a political intrigue game. In order to do that, we need to have this shared experience of all these, you know, rivalries, treaties, kingdoms, betrayals, all this stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
Yes, I'll say shout out Wayfinder Experience. That was my live action role play community. They are incredible. They are still making stuff even in a digital age. Wayfinderexperience.com. Love those folks.
Shout out. I love a shout out.
Yes.
So in the theater canon, what do you think is a show that's got to go? We're tired of it.
I'm so glad you asked me this question, Danny, because it is this show that I'm going to name. It surprises me that it's come up so strongly for me in this past year. It's one that I had a very big connection to when I was a child, and I could say was like one of the first introductions into the world of theater. But it's The Phantom of the Opera is a show that I think we can send off down the river or send that into space or wherever it needs to go. Okay, so I think it's a fascinating story. I'm specifically talking about the musical, although the story itself has its problems. The musical, it speaks to a real. There's a lot of conflicting feelings I have about it, because the music itself is really beautiful and requires an incredible talent of the singer to really be able to sing it. That being said, the story is horrible. It's abusive. It fetishizes this like toxic ownership over a person or someone's art. The lead female character is constantly undercut with her own weaknesses. It glorifies this like, I don't know, like the extreme of the nice boy, the nice guy mentality. Seriously. Working from the shadows.
Yeah.
And I got it. Okay, so context for myself. It was the first musical I ever saw. It was the first show I saw on Broadway. My dad, growing up, he's a musician. We lived in upstate New York. He'd constantly be going down to the city, and he was so great about standing in the rush ticket lines early in the morning, or going to like NYC, TKS to get discount tickets. So I had the ability and access to see a lot of shows at a really young age because of where he was positioned. I saw Phantom of the Opera when I was like 8 or something, and I loved it. I thought it was beautiful. I loved how extravagant it was. I loved it so much that I co-directed, produced, and starred in a production on my 9th birthday, where I got a bunch of my friends to come, and we did a little 15-minute version of Phantom of the Opera. Had all my favorite songs in it, had my favorite moments, which was mostly just the journey down into his cavern. Like that was the part that I was like, I want someone walking through a mirror, I want an underground lake, and I want a chandelier to fall. Those are the 3 key things for this. But I performed that on my 9th birthday in a little black top hat, in a sparkly black cape, a button-up short sleeve white shirt, black shorts, and then I knew he had really cool boots, so I got my black Wellington rain boots that came up to about my knees. And needless to say, my obsession with this show is very deep-seated, and it lay dormant for many, many years until like April of 2020, where I watched a live stream of the 25th anniversary at I think the Royal Albert's Hall in London. It's on YouTube. And I just remembered my fascination with the story. And so it was a wash of this childhood nostalgia, but then also seeing the story for what it actually is and seeing all the problems of it. And it put me down a rabbit hole for about 2 weeks of kind of listening to the music and doing research about the production, because it was the longest running show on Broadway and it closed because of the pandemic. So it's so then in my mind it was more than just the story. It wasn't just the Phantom that people go to see. They go for the New York experience of what they believe theater to be. So when I say this is the show that has to go, I think it also reflects a larger theater experience that we just gotta let go of after this commercial. People, I mean, they go to see the show, but they're there to walk down 42nd Street. They're there to stand underneath the marquee. They're there to have the whole New York experience, which is to say an extremely expensive and privileged experience. So also having that experience be paired with this sadistic genius who spends all his time underground, does the weirdest hand movements ever. I just like, oh my God, let it go. But, and
Yeah.
what I will say is, I would love to let it go so that in another 30 years, I can revive it and direct a Brechtian deconstruction of the Phantom of the Opera, where we really address all of its ableist, all the ways in which it's ableist, all the ways in which it's extremely like abusive and toxic, and like, is there a way to revisit that show and actually engage with what is actually going on in the story? Because that is also another opportunity that I think, when something is canon and problematic, I think it is not it's not necessarily our job, but there is a responsibility to continue to engage with choices that we as a society have made in our past.
Yeah.
The stories that we choose to elevate. A lot of times I think it means it's time to put that play up on the shelf, not do it. But I also think there should always be an opportunity for artists to come along and say, this play is extremely difficult to experience and process and work on. I want to investigate those difficulties, and hopefully out of it, we will understand a little more of the complexities that go into our lives as humans, but also just the creative process in general.
Yeah.
So
a Brechtian Phantom in 30 years.
I mean, like, it's
I'm gonna hold you to it, honestly.
Please do. It's such a campy show. I mean, like, it's opera, but there's all these breaking of the fourth wall where a show starts and they're like, no, it's rehearsal. And then he's like, they're in a rehearsal, and then he says, let the performance begin. And suddenly they're on stage in a performance. So already the lines between audience and performer are really blurred. I wonder, it's like, maybe the Phantom, there's no makeup on him, whatever. His mask just covers a regular face. He's just a regular looking dude. So he takes it off and he's like, oh, my face, how could you? I'm just like you. I also think that, like, at the core of that story, all the Phantom really wanted to do was be in a show with he just wanted to be in the show with the girl he liked. Like, if we trace it back to its origin, he's a scared kid who hides out underground and orchestrates this diabolical plan so that he can write a musical and then just be in it with his girlfriend. Just get that on stage kiss. If he can't get her to consent to it off stage, maybe he can convince her, but it's in the play. I mean, like, listen, I don't want to do it either, but it's in the play. So
I didn't write it. I mean, I did write it, but I didn't write it. You know what I mean?
Like, I did write it. I feel like it was written through me.
It wrote itself, really. It wrote itself. Like, I couldn't it.
Yeah.
So
it's just it's such a weird, campy musical. I've developed this thing with my partner, Aurelia, bless their soul, for being witness to my little wormhole of Phantom trivia. He does this thing, if you watch any Phantom, he does this thing with his hands where they're kind of like, and like he never touches Christine. He kind of like these weird like strokes with the side, so I call them phantom hands.
Ew.
And they're it's like his hands are always like at the point of orgasm, and I'm
Oh
like,
my God.
please step away from me, sir. Please step away, go back from whence you came. So
Keep these away from me.
Yes.
The uncomfortable hand gestures of it all.
Very uncomfortable hand gestures.
Yeah.
Read all this history of like 30 years on stage. Imagine all the goofs that went on backstage during that show. Like all of the mistakes of, you know, when someone made the wrong entrance and like wound up in the middle of the scene underwater and suddenly they're just standing center stage. I love the history of performance that we do not necessarily know about when we see a show. I love imagining all those little backstage antics.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that I missed most when I transitioned out of being an actor, is like the giddy excitement of what it means, or even the boredom of hanging out backstage waiting for that scene to be done. And yeah, I miss that.
Yeah, me too. That's sort of the thing too. It's like Phantom doesn't have to leave forever, but let's just set it on the shelf, like you said, bring it back different, like, you know, like,
well, and there's such an opportunity here of like, yeah, set those shows on the shelf. It's not like, I think it means one thing to cancel if something is so problematic that we just are like, never, not at all, just that has no place in our psyche. But yeah, I don't think we should be afraid. I don't think incorporating and inviting new works and new voices in means the old stuff isn't or shouldn't be done anymore. I think it totally should. I think classics and new work, I kind of experience it as like classics are the bones. They're the structure on which things were built, and new work is like blood and muscles in our body. You literally need your blood to circulate in order to stay alive. We need new work. We need new ideas and new voices constantly flowing around and over these older understandings of the work and the world. By circulating the blood, we're able to strengthen those muscles, those classics, and they get to grow with us.
Yeah.
They get to grow and change as much as we are growing and changing. And that is the most exciting thing for me about like working and challenging classics.
Yeah. And thinking about that growth, what show do you think has to join into the canon that people might not know about that everyone should? Could have been written yesterday, could be written 5 years ago.
Oh my gosh. That's such a good question. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I must say that I'm still like so at the beginning of my journey in the playwrights of today. I've, for so many years, working on developing personal connections to Shakespeare, to classic texts. It's been such a passion of mine. So if I think about new shows, I mean, if I think about what we did with House of Sueños, what Meme's done in reshaping Hamlet to tell their own life story, I'm interested in seeing more of that. I'm interested in people merging their own experience with a piece of theater, text, literature, something that is known, and a combination of those two. I'm interested in where the classical meets the contemporary. And those are the stories that I want to see really incorporated into the canon. You know, we talk about the classics are able to, the reason why something is a classic is because it reflects our humanity. It's got this universal appeal and connection. And I think it's good to test that with every piece of theater. So Yeah, from where I'm at, I'm interested in playwrights and creators taking source material and making something new out of that.
Totally.
Through this old experience, we get to re-examine or redefine something about us today. That's what really excites me. I love the way that Mem has been able to sort of uh, bend the text of Hamlet to tell their own life story. um we started working on this in 2017, and one of like the initial uh phrases or concepts that we were thinking of is, as theater artists we spend so much time putting ourselves inside these plays, that we are in service of this play. What if the play is actually in service of us?
Yeah.
um and I love that idea of what it means to centralize folks' experiences now, especially folks who have been traditionally excluded and marginalized in the Shakespeare canon and the larger theater canon. I think it's a great opportunity as we think about the shows that want to stay or want to go, put them to the test and really wrestle with the uncomfortable things that come up in doing them. So that's what I would like to see that added to the canon. I want to see more personal connections with classics, and also, if I think about like coming out of this experience, I hope that we are able to develop more theater experiences that have a greater connection to the audience. I think uh, I think when we all are able to gather together in a room, it's going to be impossible. The fourth wall, I don't think, is going to exist in the same way,
Yeah.
because there's now this larger thing that we all went through that forced us to be separate. So anytime a group of people are in a room together, I think the experience is immediately going to be more focused on those present. Um,
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to see shows that depart from that redefine what realism can mean in this moment. I hope they're more centered on personal stories and personal experiences. Um, yeah, yeah. I think that this whole idea of the kitchen sink melodrama, that where I'm just a fly on the wall just watching, I don't know that it can exist in
Right.
that way anymore. Uh, and I'm also really excited for how companies are going to continue to engage in a virtual space
Yeah.
as well. I hope every show has an option to be experienced virtually in addition to being live. I think that would be a really cool thing to strive for. Yeah.
Yeah, because especially when we just come back, it's going to be like all of us will want to rush the doors, but then our like brains will be like, wait, 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 mask distance, but what is it going to be like to sit in a theater 6 feet from anyone next to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
What's it gonna be like if an actor gets really close? Like when two people get super close together, there are all these things that are gonna fire off in our minds. And of course,
Mhm.
we can predict and hypothesize and think about that now in our states of isolation, but who knows what it's gonna be like when we all come back together. I just think like we can't just sweep this stuff under the rug. And I love that theater can entertain and transport us to a world where we don't have to think about our present moment. But
Mhm.
I never think that journey should be at the expense of our present moment.
Hmm.
If I want to be entertained, that's great. And I think it's totally valid to be able to turn my mind off. But I don't think we're, we can't write people off or judge people for the experience that they're entering into the space with.
Right.
If sitting in a room makes people uncomfortable coming out of this as much as it makes people excited, that's also part of the experience, and they're not wrong for feeling that way. So I hope we can make stories that address that paradox that we may all be feeling coming at us.
Right. And we kind of have to, because like theater, like we always adapt that way. I feel like the next week after like everything got shut down, everyone was like, okay, Zoom theater. Like a few people were like, and
Oh my
now
gosh.
everyone's on Zoom, and this Zoom theater piece is about being a Zoom theater piece. It's a piece and a piece.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, it's so fascinating. There's a wild Jeremy O. Harris, or like in the fall or something, produced two online uh performances. One was a Zoom performance of the play Heroes of the Fourth Turning by Will Arberly. I'm gonna check that. It's a fascinating play. It is about this group of young conservatives out in rural Wyoming in 2017, and it's very much about um, the, uh, the Republican conservative experience during this time. It is a play about conversation, about the nature of debate and argument, but also it invites empathy for people that I think a lot of, you know, young progressive liberal folks have very difficult. We don't know how to empathize with folks whose worldview are so radically different from ours. I
Mhm.
think it threads. It's a difficult play to experience, but it's so beautiful in the conversation it opens up. So Jeremy O. Harris produced a Zoom version of that with the actors from the original production, and it was really cool to see that on Zoom, because that play was so conversation focused. It's about a conversation. And you know, these actors are all in their bathrooms or their closets to create complete darkness, to create a setting of that, like that deep darkness of a night in Wyoming, way out in the plains with no lights anywhere. um it was fascinating to watch that. The other play that he uh, commissioned was a play called Circle Jerk, by a company called Fake Friends out of New York. And this was, I mean, it was an examination of queer culture, and specifically the white supremacy inherent in like um in white gay males mostly, and meme
Yeah.
culture, and the way all the toxicity that comes into that. But the way they shot it, it was some pre-recorded stuff, but mostly it was live. And it was, the play is absolutely insane, but the way they shot it, I'm like, this is kind of like TV. This is because it's happening live. They've got like 13 cameras and they're moving between things. So that was a type of theater that I was like, oh, this is definitely live. Like, this is happening right now. I can see them making the costume changes, and I can see them, it's three actors playing like 10 different parts. I can see them pulling on and off the wigs and navigating these characters. This is totally live, and it's also virtual.
Whoa.
um because, and I think there's a difference, you know. Everything that is in person is is a live experience that we have,
Mhm.
but we're learning that virtual experiences can also feel live and present. It doesn't necessarily have to be in person for you to acknowledge that somewhere in the world this is happening right now. Which, you know, that's a cool awareness that I think we've all been afforded in this pandemic. And it's got a shadow side, but it also has, there's interesting opportunities within it as well.
It reminds me of that whole. I always had this thought when I was a kid, is like, if I call my friend and they pick up, were they actually existing before I called, or did they only exist when they picked up the phone to
Oh my
talk to me?
gosh.
That was one of the things I thought when I was little. Not that I thought that, but I always questioned it. I was like, so is this my experience in an environment and like experiencing the things around me, or is everyone having their own one of those? Which they are, but like you don't perceive any of it. And I find that fascinating, because like before we got on this call today, you had a whole morning and I had a
Oh
whole
yeah.
morning. Like it's
Oh,
not, we exist in these
absolutely.
boxes, but like we
Yeah.
also exist in our space.
Well, okay, I love that you bring that up. I actually just closed a run of this of a telephone play experience that I
Mm,
developed with playwright Danielle Molman. And it was definitely a first draft. There have been a lot of telephone play experiences. I know On the Boards is doing one right now. with the company 600 Highwaymen. It's called 1,000 Ways. I think there are still tickets available. I've got mine for this weekend. I'm very excited. But our telephone experience was audience members signed up to receive a call, and the call that they received was from someone that claims to have known them in like elementary school. Like, hi, hi Danny, it's Daniel. I don't know if you remember, but like we went to school together. How are you doing? And it was half a scripted piece, but also half improvisation. And we were drawing givens from the people's lives because we asked them, where did you grow up? What are meaningful experiences you've had from high school? It was fascinating. No right way to engage with it. You know, we had some folks who were really weirded out, like even knowing, I know this is a performance, but all I want to say is, I'm sorry, I have no idea who you are. And like, it's so fascinating. And I liked the opportunity to make something that only existed on the phone. I personally love phone calls. I love long phone calls because exactly like you said, they're kind of existing in my head and I'm not sure if they're really there. And this whole experience of engaging and inviting audience members to make up something about their childhood and talk to this person who claims to have known them and knows these things about them, I realized in the making of it, it was a personal experience, and at times maybe a little confusing and sometimes unsettling.
Yeah.
But it was wild to make that. I'm excited for the next version of whatever that telephone experience is like.
Oh, that's incredible. I never would have thought about that. That's so funny.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing to build, and you know, obviously we built it and we had a few test calls, but since we had 4 actors, each one very skilled in their own methods of improvisation, each call was completely different.
Yeah.
Because some people came in being like, I expected a theater experience, so I'm going to be silent and not say anything. And that also works. The script works if someone doesn't respond back. And we had some people who were like, yes, I'm going to take your improv and I'll raise you a traumatic event.
Oh my
So,
God.
no.
No, that's funny.
It was fascinating to think about. Yeah, and especially like, you know, in that case, the audience is a part of the audience life was the theater experience.
Yeah.
It could only happen if they picked up that phone. It's just between two people, but that still, I think, felt real. And I hope that I hope that when people hung up the phone, they thought, hey, who are the people in my life who I've been meaning to reach out to for a while and I haven't? And I hope that, you know, in this time of isolation, when sometimes we don't know what to say to each other, we don't know how to catch up with each other.
Right.
I hope that people picked up the phone on their own and made calls to folks they haven't talked to in a while.
Right. Hey everyone, go call someone you want to talk to.
Yeah,
Just go give them a phone call. Tell them you said, I miss you a bit. Let's
it's good.
chat.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's good to reach out, and you know, I know for myself I get anxious because I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not reaching out enough, and what's too much, and what are they going to say, and I don't want to encroach upon their life. But I remember like we're all going through our own special kind of anxious experiences right now.
Right.
And it's nice to be able to pick up the phone every once in a while and reach out to folks and say, hey, I miss you. I'm thinking about you.
Exactly. Thinking about you.
Mhm.
So do you have any shows, maybe the ones you were just talking about, that you'd like to promote right now?
Yes, of course. I mean, listen, House of Sueños has been an incredible undertaking, years in the making. This latest 5 episode audio drama um, has been so much fun to work on. We amassed a beautiful team of artists and actors to record it, and Meme's writing has continued to grow and deepen over the versions. You know, when it was a solo show, my favorite thing about it was just them, and it felt so non-linear. It was like this moment in time they are experiencing all these moments from their life, that a moment from childhood feeds back into a moment right now, which turns into a high school moment. And it felt like everything happened right on top of one another. And now, shifting it into a 5-episode audio drama, we've been able to straighten out that line, add 5 more voices to this play, and it's a story in a way that it was, but it's so different from what it's been before. The nature of this piece is growth and development. It changes because Meme, the playwright, is changing. Each year they grow, they understand their own experience and journey more. They they uh, they learn new things from returning to the original text of Hamlet that they didn't see before. That's true for all of us. You know, I think one of the reasons I love Shakespeare so much is I can have an experience with a play at 3 different points in my life, and I will see something different, not because the play has changed, but because I have changed. So this latest version of House of Sueños is really exciting. It's been so wonderful to craft, direct, collaborate on the creation of it, and I'm so thrilled that people get to experience this story, and I hope that it sparks creativity within anyone who listens, who feel, hey, I hope it makes people feel, oh my gosh, maybe my life story is just as important and poetic as one of the most famous plays of Western civilization.
Right.
Maybe my voice is just as profound as Hamlet's.
Yeah.
And I hope people go off and make their own stories, make their own work. But yeah, House of Sueños is being produced by Seattle Shakespeare Company. It comes out every Wednesday until March 17th. I think episode 5 comes out at the end of February, but the whole thing is available until March 17th. And I know that in the making of this, this isn't the end of this story. Eventually, obviously, we need to see this story on stage. It needs to be actualized in that way. I hope that we're able to make a TV show out of it one
Yeah,
day.
I was
It's
just
the
thinking about that. I was like,
oh
it'd
my
be good as a TV show, probably.
yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving, and I'm so excited for how all the ways that it will continue to grow that we don't even know of right now.
Right.
I will say on a very personal note for me, I'm dyslexic, and I grew up loving audio dramas and audio books and radio plays. So it's been a wonderful return to those that method of storytelling that first excited my imagination. And I've never worked so in-depthly on a process as I have on this. And I'm so thankful to have been a part of it. It's been beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds amazing. Like listened to the first episode the other day and I loved it. I'm very excited to listen to the next one. And yeah, it can has no boundaries, you know, can go anywhere, do anything. Any
Absolutely.
more little promotional moments that you'd like to? Where can people keep up with you? Any
Promotional moments. Oh my gosh, where can people keep up with me? I don't know anymore. I mean, I'm on the socials. It's mostly just my full name, Wiley Basho Gorn. My website also, you can, see there's actually some great photos on my website of the 2017 production of House of Sueños. You can see Meme in all their glory depicting this beautiful story. Um, yeah, right now I know my work aside from House of Sueños, I'm trying to go back to what my own personal practice is, how I can continue to grow and strengthen the way I incorporate work within myself. Most recently, my shift has really been into voice and text work. I think that's where um, people, not just performers, everyone has an opportunity to connect back with how they are feeling and the language that they need to express themselves in this moment. So after House of Sueños, I hope that I'm able to more reinvest in my own growth and journey in the voice and text work, and also how this, continued awareness of anti-racist practices, how that all fits into that.
yeah.
I think any work that we do moving forward now, has to involve that awareness. And I'm excited to continue having those uncomfortable conversations and disrupting my own natural flow of thinking around this stuff. So yeah, House of Sueños is great. Check out the stuff that Seattle Shakespeare's Company is doing. They've got a wonderful bilingual adaptation of Hamlet coming up right after House of Sueños, adapted by Ana Maria Campoy.
Who we
And
love on this podcast.
yes, oh, so wonderful. And then they've also got their tour of Romeo and Juliet is going to be coming up after that, and that's got some familiar voices from House of Sueños, and the one and only Meme Garcia will be
Romeo y
part of that as well.
Julieta.
Oh
Amazing.
yes, indeed. Thank you. Yeah. So they're great folks to check out. I mean, in general, seek out theater companies. For what folks are making. It can feel a little monotonous to log into the Zoom experience, but I encourage everyone to look at what theater companies are doing, and also look outside of your own theater, look outside of your own city, because the accessibility that people that companies are committing to during this time, I think is really, really cool. And the more we can reflect back that yes, that is the right choice, it should be more of this, more now please, the more we can do that, the better. The more that reminds us that we are, even though we are isolated, we're all in this together, and we're all gonna come out of this wiser and stronger in ways that we may not know yet.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And my very last question is, who would you like to see on this podcast?
Who would I like to see on this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Oof, great question. Great question. You know, I think Sophie Franco, who played the voice of the attic in House of Sueños. They're also directing Romeo y Julieta. I think they'd be a great person to get on it. I think they're in a fascinating stage in their career where they've realized that their work as an actor, that they have so much more to offer in addition to that. I think that's something they've known for quite some time, but they're stepping more into being a director. I think getting another director and creator's perspective and experience on what it's like to reform a classic in an image that reflects today, I think would be great. So they'd be a good person to reach out to.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Any little last tidbits for the audience before we say goodbye today?
You know, thank you so much. This was really lovely. It was great talking with you, Danny.
You too.
I'm looking at, I have this print on my wall, and it says chaos is nature's way of doing things. So I've been thinking about that a lot. So I'll leave it with that. And yeah, this is the time to double down on who we are. And not feel like we've got to sacrifice our own experiences and identities in order to be a part of this work. The work thrives off of you in this moment. Yeah, that's what I'll say. The readiness is all, or whatever.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the Next Canon podcast. And thank you guys at home for listening to the Next Canon podcast. We will see you next week. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.